2, 1. We're live for our Coffee and Kabbalah, Parshat Beshalach. I'm so excited about today's class and dedicated to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. There we go. Move my chair. Okay. So Parshat Beshalach, we are on season 2. I'm gonna for my own made up Netflix season of Exodus. This is the beginning, first premiere. What's called the premiere of season 2 of Exodus. Have you been following? Of Exodus season 2. We ended off last season with a huge bang. The Jews left Egypt. Now we're beginning season 2 with the next chapter where the Jews are going to be in the desert for a long time, right? 40 years in the desert. Season 2 begins. This Parsha is packed. This episode is just one episode, which could be like 3 seasons of its own. So this Parsha is really big, which is why let's jump right in. So the Jewish people leave Mitzrayim. And Hashem hardens Pharaoh's heart and makes them chase after him. That's like the drama's not over. It's not like we left, everything's great. You think like it's over, the story's over. Now we're going to go to Eretz Yisrael and we're going to have our own nation and everything's going to be great. We're going to get the Torah. But of course, we need more action. So Pharaoh chases them and the Jewish people are now, we finally came out a few days ago. We were singing, right? And now Pharaoh's chasing us. They keep going and they're led to an ocean. And they feel defeated. They feel devastated. And we're going to talk about that a lot. And Hashem tells Moshe, everyone cries out, they want to go back to Egypt, right? And Hashem tells Moshe to raise his wand, his staff over the water. And what happens? It splits, the ocean splits and allows Bnei Israel, the Jewish people, the entire nation to pass through on dry land. And then as the Egyptians pursue them into this miraculous ocean splitting, the ocean closes in on them and they all drown. And when the Jewish people see that they drowned and they made it on the other side, all of the wealth and all the rest of the wealth, right, that they didn't elevate yet, washes up onto shore. And the Jewish people sing praise and thanks to Hashem, and that's the Shabbos. That's why we call it Shabbos Shira, because of the Shira of Miriam led the women in Shira, and like we were saying, like the 2 leaders, right? Miriam led the women in Shira, and Moshe led the men in Shira. But we learned that the women Shira came from a much higher place because they're Emunah. They knew the whole time they had Emunah in Hashem that Hashem would deliver for them. So their Shira was really strengthened by their Emunah, and therefore the Shira is called, come on in. The Shira is, Shira, we're talking about you. Have a seat, have your coffee. The Shira is, the Haftorah brings Shira Tzvorah because a Shira of a woman to emphasize this idea. So this miracle is done, and now what is the next drama in this episode? Episode's not over, right? It's not enough. Like the splitting of the sea, the splitting of the waters across the world. It's as Hashem spared Pharaohs that he would live to tell the story, to tell this miracles of Hashem for the rest of his life, to spread the miracles of Hashem. And now the next. So we have the protagonist of the story, the Jewish people. What is their next issue? They're in the desert and they're hungry and thirsty, right? They finished their matzah. What are they going to eat? They're a desert. If you've ever been in the desert, which I've been on a hike, and you don't have water, even if you have water, but it's hot, you can't really survive in the heat. It's like I had water still, and I felt like a few hours of it, I lived in a heat wave, I wouldn't survive without shelter. It's really, really bad. And they're hungry and thirsty, and they're complaining to Moshe and Aaron, why did you take us here? Are you going to kill us, right? And Hashem makes miracles. He sweetens the bitter waters of Mara. They're found water, but it's bitter, and he tells them to put something in it, and it becomes sweet. And then he has Moshe bring water from a rock, right, with his stick, with his magic wand. And then how do they get food? The man, right? We have the story of the man in this week's parsha as well. This is a very exciting parsha, right? Food appears from the heavens every morning at their doorstep, right? They don't have anything physical to worry about. Hashem sends them food from the sky. Manna rains down from the heavens before dawn. Every morning they wake up and they have the food. What is man? Man is a white, like, loaf of bread or something, white like it seems like it was white like a coriander, and it can taste like anything they want it to taste. It is miraculous. It can be kneaded and made into whatever they want it to be. It could be fried, it could be eaten as it is, and it is miraculous, and it sustains them and it satisfies them. Thinking about food satisfying us in Shvat, we learn about the ultimate satisfaction. We've been studying and internalizing the idea of really being satisfied from our food, and the man was the ultimate food that satisfied them on every level because it was very physically satisfying, and it was divine. It was literally food that was divine, and it satisfied them on all levels. And that's why it says the man was extra satisfying, and there was no waste. They didn't have to use the bathroom because there was no waste. All of it was absorbed by their body, the taste and everything. So when you're eating food that's divine, it's going to fulfill you in all ways, right? And we actually learned that the man was like our introduction to food as a nation, and we were a very immature nation. We're at birth. We're our nation at a baby level, just forming in the initial stages. And it's like a baby receives their food, right? They don't have the capacity yet to elevate their food, just receiving their food from Hashem. So we're understanding that we're in a nation in our infantile stage where we're receiving food from Hashem, being nourished by Hashem, receiving it like mother's milk as a nation. And we learned that in Nisan, month of Nisan, it's like the first month of the year. We're like in Aries, we're in the most immature stage of our growth. Like a lamb just follows their master. And this is one of the most amazing things about the man is that Hashem designed it specifically that they had no leftovers. They couldn't leave any leftovers. And whatever they left over, if they decided to leave any food, it would be moldy and had worms by the next day. And this meant that they had to go out to sleep every night with a bare cupboard, not having any food left, and having to trust every day that tomorrow Hashem will give me food again, right? Even if I wasn't the perfect day, I had to trust Hashem that He's still going to deliver. And Hashem designed it that way. It could have been that they had, they could have saved and had leftovers, but it was intentionally so to form our emunah, to nourish our emunah, to help us grow in this faith, to be able to go to sleep every single night without any food and having to trust that tomorrow morning Hashem will give me food again. And every single day to build that faith. Imagine going to bed without any food, without a penny in your bank account, that just each day, every day having to rely on the miracles of Hashem day after day, right? And we learned that even in the Manna, it was in a revealed way, but in truth, every single day, that is actually how we receive our nourishment, but it's concealed by so many layers, right? So many facades in this world to make us feel like we have control. But in every moment, we know in every day, Hashem, it's a miracle that Hashem gives us what we have. Every morning that we receive our soul, it's a miracle. Sometimes we forget that it's a miracle and we take it for granted, but it's covered and concealed by nature. Nature conceals Hashem, right? Nature is what covers up the miracles of Hashem. But really, our food is a miracle every single day. Every time we have food to eat, every day, it's another blessing, it's another gift. And it's another time to say thank you. But when we were in this infantile stage, it was in a very revealed way. It was obvious and it was clear. Oh, I asked someone to take a picture of us. Someone passing the water, please. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So the man nurtured our faith as well. It nurtured our faith and dependence on Hashem that every morning we sustain and we internalize this idea. And now as we eat our food and we learn about the man, we can again remember that every single time we have food, not to take for granted that we have food, to remember that truly all our food is manna, right? Man from min Hashem. That really all of our food is man. All our food is min Hashem, but it's concealed by all of the work that we put into it to make us feel like we provided it. But we know that even if we do everything that we need to do, even if a farmer plants everything, without Hashem's blessing, nothing will grow, right? Even if we put so much effort into working, without Hashem's blessing, we could have no success. And someone could put in nothing, no effort, and then have success because it really is the blessing of Hashem. But it's disguised to make us feel like it's our effort or our lack of effort. And when we fail, it's also because of Hashem, right? If we put in tons of effort and we don't succeed, that's not us. That's Hashem deciding that wasn't meant to be for us. And if we suddenly succeed, that's also Hashem. And it's good to remember that our failures and our successes are all divine, are all from Hashem. And we don't get to have that every single day, but it's really an important idea to remember from the man. And that's when we take off challah from our bread, and the man representing the challah, right? So let's go back. So what happened on Friday? Friday morning, suddenly they open their doors to get their breakfast from Hashem. And they see a double portion. They say, why is double portion? And Moshe says, because on Shabbos, you can't collect things from the outside into the inside, right? So Hashem's giving you a double portion out for Shabbos. So you have one now and one for Shabbos. And we learn that Dasan and Aviram, troublemakers, some of the antagonists of this episode, and last week's episode, right? These antagonists, they want to deter the Jewish people away from faith in Hashem. And they want us to think that, no, Moshe's wrong. All of this is just a natural coincidence, right? It's just this freak of nature. This is not God. So what they did was that the night of, Hashem said, Moshe told you that Hashem said he's not going to put man on Shabbos, but they took from their own man and they spread it out on Friday, Shabbos morning. So the Jewish people wake up and see, look, this is not God. This is just something that happens. And the Jewish people would start to doubt that and take away from that belief. And the birds came and ate it all up to make sure that wouldn't happen. And that's why we feed the birds. One of the reasons we feed the birds on Shabbos Shira, and we leave out food for the birds because they saved us from this doubt that the Dasan Aviram began to plant. And also because the birds joined us in Shira. It says when we sang Shira to Hashem, they joined us and they came with us through the waters, through the split ocean, and sang with us. So that is one of the two reasons that was brought down why we appreciate the birds in this week's parsha. So even Aaron is told to save some of the man in a jar for generations as a testimony to this miracle that all food comes from Hashem, right? And when we separate challah, which the reason on Shabbos we take 2 challahs is to remember the 2 portions of manna we receive for Shabbos. The covering on top is the dew that Hashem put on top of it to protect it, right, from being eaten, and underneath it to being touched by the dew underneath it that Hashem put underneath it. So that's why we cover our challah and put something underneath it. And we take a piece of our challah, we make it to remember that even though we don't see our food falling from the sky like they did, everything that we have, every bread that we own is truly a miracle from Hashem. And we take off a piece and give it away to remember that all of it is from Hashem. Okay. Now the parsha ends with a dramatic story. It doesn't end here. They reach Rephidim and they're attacked by the Amalekim, right? The big antagonists of this week's episode, who are defeated by Moshe's Philos and an army raised by Yehoshua. And that is the end of this week's parsha. Let's dive in. The name of the parsha. We'll even talk about it. Fine. Okay. The name of the parsha has a lot of questions. Beshalach means when he sent. Who sent? Who sent the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim? You think Hashem, right? But it was Paro. It's the pasuk says. Let me grab my chumash. The pasuk says, "Vayhi Beshalach Paro." When Paro sent the Jewish people out, right? Why did Paro have to send us out? Hashem took us out. So what do we learn from this? Paro had to send us out because there were Jews that didn't want to go. They said, we don't want to go with them. We're going to stay here, right? And Paro said, no, you're not staying here. And he had to send them out. He kicked them out. He said, get out of here. So that's why it says Beshalach Paro, because there's people that Paro had to send out. Now this speaks very negatively. It reminds us the negative trait about the Jewish people, that many of them didn't want to leave Mitzrayim. That even though Hashem saved us, we wanted to stay in such a depraved land. Why do we name the parsha Beshalach? It also has nothing to do with this week's parsha. This Paro sent us out last episode. This episode is about Kriyas Yamsuf. That is the main climactic event in this week's parsha. So we would think that we would name it something more relevant to the main idea in this week's parsha, which is Kriyas Yamsuf. And it begins, the pasuk says, "Vayhi Beshalach Paro asam v'lo nacham," right? And Elokim derech eretz plishtim ki karavhu. And again, that pasuk is also negative. It says Hashem didn't send them in a direct way through the eretz plishtim because it would be too close, and they're going to want to go back. Or a lot of people are going to want to go back. The Paro sent out, right? Amar Elokim. The pasuk says, right? If they see a war coming, they'll see their enemies. They're going to want to go back to Mitzrayim. It was too close, so Hashem took them in a roundabout way. That's why Hashem took them in a different way. Because when we see their way, how they got to the Sea of Reeds, you'd be like, why would they go there? They're trying to go to Eretz Yisrael here, and then they're going here. It makes absolutely no sense. So this is why pasuk tells us this. But yet, this whole idea of Paro sending them out is something that belonged to last week. And even if it belonged to this week, it's speaking derogatorily about the Jewish people. We see in the next pasuk, right after this in Beshalach, that another thing that reminds us that not the Jewish people didn't want to go out. That many of the Jewish people didn't want to leave. Vayasev Elokim esam derech hamidbar, right? So he took them in a roundabout way through the Midbar Yamsuf, to the Yamsuf. V'chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael meretz Mitzrayim, and they left Mitzrayim chamushim, armed, right? Chamush means armed. Someone is armed. Why do we have to know this? So Rashi brings out 2 answers. The main answer is to know later at the end of the parsha, when they have weapons to fight Amalek, where they get their weapons from, to know that they left armed. But this term chamushim, Rashi brings down a second answer, that chamushim tells us that it also can mean a fifth. Only 1/5 of Jewish people left Mitzrayim because 4/5 died in the plague of darkness because they didn't want to leave. They refused to leave. And we learned that those Jews who didn't want to leave weren't forced to leave. But when Mashiach comes, all Jews are going to leave. And there's going to be no one who doesn't want to leave, and everyone's going to be taken out. But at this time, only 1/5, right? Isn't that insane? 4/5 of their nation died. It's telling us something so negative about them, that they were so entrapped in this enslaved mentality that they died and didn't leave Mitzrayim, right? And we're naming this whole parsha Beshalach to remind us of this. So why do we name a parsha on something negative? So we learn something amazing from this idea, that the ultimate reason we went down to Mitzrayim was to transform the darkness into light, to elevate the sparks of materialism and to bring them up to the space and to the space of Kedusha, to elevate them to Kedusha. And the ultimate way of doing this, the ultimate way of transformation, of taking something dark and elevating it into light and taking the trapped sparks from the possession of the Egyptians and moving it into the possession of the Jewish people, the ultimate way of transforming darkness into light is when the darkness itself becomes light. Right? It says, Yisro na'or haba min hachoshech. We mentioned this a lot in Hanukkah, that the advantage, Shalom Melech wasn't saying, I see an advantage, obviously light is greater than darkness. He says, I see an advantage, that there's an advantage to light that comes from darkness, that itself. That when the light is taken from darkness, when a dark situation becomes light itself, that is the ultimate testament. That's the ultimate light. That's light that perseveres. That's light that lasts. That's true light. That's the true transformation. And the ultimate transformation is when Paro himself, when we see that Paro himself, instead of deterring us and holding us back, he is the greatest. He was our biggest obstacle. He was our greatest challenger. He was our biggest enemy, when our enemy itself is one sending us out. We see that our enemy is becoming a catalyst for positive change and for positive growth. He's sending us out. He's saying, you have to go. Come. That's in the merit of the other Jewish people who had Emunah, right? Even Paro himself was involved in the Geula. And that's why it says Beshalach Paro. It's saying this is the ultimate transformation. The Paro was the one. So we're looking at it not to say something negative about the Jewish people, because let's backtrack a little bit. Why wouldn't the Jewish people want to leave such bitter slavery, right? What did Paro have to force them to go out? Wouldn't they want to leave such a horrible environment, physically oppressed and pursued, and emotionally and psychologically tortured? Who wouldn't want to leave? Hashem is saying, I'm taking you out to freedom. Why wouldn't they go? Why would Paro have to oppress them? This is something that my own thought. I haven't seen this anywhere, but I'm sure that there are other people have said this. But when I was thinking about this a lot, I'm thinking, why would there be so many Jews who wouldn't want to leave? And you think about your own life and how many times you've been in a place that's uncomfortable, or I've been in a place that's constricting and limiting, and sometimes even painful, physically and psychologically painful, and how hard and how we get so used to situations in our life that the alternative becomes terrifying, that you don't even know anything else, right? You're in such a stuck place. And this is a reality that we all can probably relate to in a lot of ways in our lives. I guess it's not even it's a Stockholm syndrome of sorts, but human beings are adaptable, and we learn that human beings can adapt to any situation. And Viktor Frankl attests to this. I was going to bring my book, but I didn't bring it with me, that when they were liberated from the Holocaust, there were many people who couldn't handle the idea of liberation. They were so used to who they were as prisoners that they just died. They didn't even know what to do with themselves when liberated. And we see many people who are liberated from prison who go back to prison or don't want to leave prison, because the opportunities that come with freedom are so foreign to them. They become so accustomed to the pain that they're in. They become so accustomed to a painful situation. We see so many people in an abusive relationship being afraid to leave that marriage because they lived most of their lives in a toxic marriage where they're abused, and they don't even know who they are outside of that. They can't even conceptualize an idea outside of that. And we see so many people choosing to stay in an unhealthy situation because the alternative is so terrifying, and it's so anathema, and it's so unfamiliar to them. I related to this when I thought about this first, when it was in COVID, and on one hand, COVID was terrible and many people died, and I was praying for it to end, but there was still a terrifying, I was gripped by like a paralyzing fear of like what will happen when lockdown ends and restrictions end and I have to socialize again, and I'm given the opportunity to make big events again. And I was so comfortable with over a year of not making big events, not doing anything like that. I'm not inviting people anymore, not hosting, not socializing, not getting dressed. It was just, I really was terrified. And I was like, I just like, every time they extended it, I breathed a sigh of relief, because I wasn't ready to even face the opportunities that came with life going back to normal, even though it had only been a year and a half. So when I thought about that, and I really thought about how I'm praying for COVID to end, I don't want people to get sick, but for myself, I want to stay in lockdown forever. I just would be much more comfortable, really honestly, in lockdown forever. And now that it's over, I can look back and see that it was like just fear of how I would deal with the opportunities that came. And I could see that was just less than 2 years. And imagining somebody in a situation for most of their life or their entire life, they can't even picture what life can look like outside of that, and how they'll be outside of that, and how they will cope with the opportunities that are presented to them. And when the pain is so familiar and that's all we know, we often choose to stay in painful situations. And this is an opportunity in this parsha to really reflect on situations that maybe we're staying in because we're afraid of moving out. And I think about it as like somebody who's been confined to a small box their whole life. Their limbs, they don't even even when they're let out, they don't even know how to stretch, right? Their body doesn't know how to stretch. Or a bird that's been in a cage their whole life suddenly has to learn how to fly. It's scary. They could fall, right? They don't know what to do, but really they know how to fly. It'll come naturally to them. And we learn actually that this was so much the case in Mitzrayim, that the reason this is given as an answer of why Moshe had to be raised in the palace, and specifically from when he was a baby, he had to be taken, right? He could have been saved, raised amongst his brothers, and then come and liberate us. But we learned that Moshe had to be raised not in a slave mentality, in a palace, in a space of freedom. And it was the only way. The freedom had to come from outside, because only because he wasn't in that situation, he was able to look upon it from an outside perspective and say, this is not okay. This reality that you're accepting as normal and just learning to live with, I see that it's not okay. You are in the situation. You have to make peace with it. You have to learn how to live in it. You have to learn to live in the situation that you're given. You have to be able to make a life in the hardships. You can't live every day, right, without. So there was a certain acceptance that had happened. The most people accepted that this is the reality that we live in. This is what we have to do. We have to do what we can to survive, hold our heads down, and get through it and plow through it. But Moshe never accepted this reality of slavery for a minute. He said, this is not normal. This is not okay. This is not going to, this can't continue. And so because that was Moshe's mentality from the beginning, he never accepted that slave mentality. He never succumbed to it. We also see that Miriam didn't, even though she was in this, right? Miriam never succumbed to it. She said, what are you doing? This is worse than Paro. Miriam constantly pushed back, and she fought against the narrative, this slave narrative that almost everybody succumbed to. Even her father, the leader of the Jewish people, Amram, accepted it. He said, this is a situation. Let's do our best. Let's not continue to have children so they don't kill them, right? Let's do our best in the situation that we're in. And there's nothing wrong with that, because people do what they need to survive. But in order to be able to expand and to take freedom when it comes, when opportunity comes, we need to be able to unadapt and to see what is, be able to look back and see what is okay, what is not, and to be able to leap into the unknown, although it's terrifying. And just like with Moshe, they needed someone from the outside to show them that it's okay, to show them what freedom can look like, to keep it convincing them, to bring them these miracles, the taste of freedom, so they can see what miracles look like. They can see that they can rely on Hashem and trust in Hashem. Often we need someone, right? I feel like in those times when I was terrified to leave, I really needed someone to say, like, it's going to be okay, right? You'll be okay. You'll start slow. You'll be able to handle it. It was actually terrifying. I was just like gripped by fear of like the lockdown ending. I don't know if anyone here relates to me, but for me, it was like the opposite, just not wanting to like go back into the possibilities and the expectations of me in this world where everything is not possibility. I really liked not having to do anything. And now I'm so grateful that we're not in lockdown, right? We wouldn't be sitting here together. And it is so much nicer to go out and be able to walk more than 500 meters from our house and fly to the Knesset Shlochais with a few thousand Shlochais and get strength from each other. But if sometimes we just need someone on the outside to tell us, look, like, you're getting out of a situation, a toxic relationship, and it's going to be okay. I've been there. I've been in that space. It's scary, but you'll come out on the other side so much better, so much stronger for it. And yes, it'll be uncomfortable for a bit, and you'll lean into that discomfort, and you'll get through to the other side. So ultimately, we're not speaking, the name Beshalach is not speaking of a nation to say the negative about a nation who was afraid to leave, but rather we're speaking about the greatest transformation, that evil itself transforms into light. And it underscores this idea that even the most perverse and dark parts of existence, like Paro, can end up being the catalyst for positive influence and positive change. That he himself was the catalyst to bring us out into a positive state, to take us out of a limited state into a higher state. And that's when we can look at ourselves in darkness and say that the ultimate way that we can get through darkness in our lives, and to know that even in the worst situation, the darkness itself can be the one that pushes us to growth. That we can look into that darkness to push us out into growth, and that not to try to escape the situation in our life, but rather to see within the darkness how that itself can become a light for us and can turn around completely, and to have trust in Hashem that's what can happen. Okay, so we spoke about the man, we spoke about the birds. Now we're going to go to what happens right after, right? On the fourth day after they left, Paro found out that they weren't going to come back, right? They said, we're going to go out and serve Hashem in Mitzrayim. He thought maybe they're going to come back. On the fourth day, he finds out they're not coming back. They're leaving for good. They're not coming back here. You're not going to have any more slaves. So Paro, Hashem changes his heart, and he says, what have we done, right? Why we send them away? So he harnesses his chariot. He takes 600 tanks, chariots, which were basically army tanks, and all of the remaining chariots in Egypt and officers on all of them, and he brings them all to chase the Jewish people and bring them back, right? Now the people are terrified. So this is only 4 days after they're liberated, and now they're already being chased back. So they haven't even had a time to taste freedom, and now their pursuers that had control over them their whole lives are pursuing them. So of course they're terrified. And so this is where we go into the first source. So Paro is getting closer. The Yisu B'nai Israel, we can imagine this scene, right? There's the whole nation in front of an ocean. They have nowhere to go, and Paro is behind them and closing in on them. They're terrified. Mitzrayim, their pursuers, their attackers are traveling behind them. No Sechraim are chasing them. Vayirum od, and they were very scared. Vayitz'aku B'nai Israel Hashem, and they screamed out to Hashem. That's amazing, right? They're calling to Hashem. They're davening to Hashem. They believe in Hashem. They're like, Hashem, save us. Vayomru Moshe, and then they said to Moshe, Hamabli ein kvar b'Mitzrayim l'kachtanu. Okay, so let's go a little bit. Let's pause for a moment. The Medrash fills in this story and tells us, we're going to read these words, and we're going to learn that there was actually there's a long few psukim that describe the Jewish people's reaction to this predicament that they're in. And the Medrash fills in the backstory and says that the Jewish people were terrified, and they divided into 4 different camps, right? 1 Jew, 3 opinions, right? But this is a whole nation. They have 4 different main camps and groups and factions, and deciding how they're going to deal with this tragedy, this calamity that's falling upon them. Group number 1 says Hamabli and Kfar Mitzrayim. They said group number 1 says, let's jump into the ocean and drown. We'd rather commit suicide than go back and be slaves again, because the slavery was impossible. We can't go back there. We're going to just jump in the ocean and drown and kill ourselves because we can't go back. The next group says that let us go back to Mitzrayim, right? We would rather just go back with them than be killed, right? Makes sense. The next group says let us daven to Hashem to save us, right? Hashem took us out. He can save us now. Sounds great. And the 4th opinion says, let's fight them, right? We're a huge nation. Let's fight back, right? We're not scared of them. We'll fight back. So let's read the words that they say. The Moshe Mabli and Kfar Mitzrayim, are there not enough graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the Midbar? Why did you even take us out of Egypt to kill us here? Hello, this is what we told you, Mitzrayim. These are the people that Parah to force out. Leave us alone. Let us keep serving in our state of entrapment, right? In our state of slavery. We'd rather be slaves and live than die in the midbar, right? So this is their reaction, and the Medrash fills in the backstory. Why? To tell us and explain to us Moshe's unusual answer. So let's go to the second source. So how does Moshe answer them? The next pasuk says, and Moshe answers them with one answer that answers all 4 factions. The answer of Moshe is Al tira'u. Al tira'u, don't be afraid. That's for the people who want to kill themselves. He says, don't worry, don't be afraid. Hisyatzavu, and he continues to tell them, just stand. Just stay where you are. Don't go jump in the ocean. Don't go back to Mitzrayim. Stay where you are, and you'll see it's Yeshua Hashem salvation, right? You don't have to kill yourself because Hashem will save you. Don't worry. Wait a minute, and you don't have to go back to Mitzrayim because Hashem will save you. As Yashu is Hashem, Asher Yasa Lachem Hayom, that Hashem will do to you today. Ki Asher Isam Es Mitzrayim Hayom Lo Tasifu L'Ras Adolam. Right? You see them today, you'll never see them again. So don't go back to Mitzrayim. Don't kill yourself. Do anything rash. Just wait for Hashem's salvation. For the next 2 factions, Moshe continues and says, Hashem yilachem lachem v'atam tacharishon. Right? Why does he continue and say this? To answer the other 2 factions. Hashem yilachem lachem is saying, don't fight. Hashem's going to fight for you. You don't need to fight. Hashem is going to fight for you. V'atam tacharishon is for the ones who wanted to daven to Hashem, to cry out and daven to Hashem. He says, you be quiet. Atam tacharishon, just be quiet. You don't need to daven. Hashem is going to fight for you. You have nothing to daven for. Don't worry. Hashem is going to save you. Now, our question on this is, I'm sure some of us have been familiar with the 4 schools of thought, right? Other years I've shared this beautiful idea on how it's really the 4 ways that we cope sometimes in our lives, and the advantages or disadvantages to it, right? How we cope with different situations, right? Sometimes we, in short, right? Sometimes we, suicide is just surrendering, right? Surrendering to the problem and giving in to letting it overtake our lives. Running back is running away from Mitzrayim. Running back to Mitzrayim is running away from our problems, just hiding from it and being in denial and ignoring it and going back to an uncomfortable situation. And then there's davening, and then there's fighting with it, right? Like attacking it and fighting it and saying, why does this happen to me? So we have different ways. Anyways, we're not going to go into that so much today. Maybe I'll link that class. So what the main question is, the first, we understand why they're problematic, right? Why would killing yourself, Moshe has to tell them not to do that, right? Because they're going to be saved. Running back to Mitzrayim is definitely a bad idea, right? But the second 2 seem like very valid answers, very legitimate, right? Of course, it sounds like davening, that's what we do. When we're davening, we turn to Hashem. That's our umanus, that's our tefillah, right? Of course we should daven. Why is Moshe telling them to be quiet? And those who wanted to fight back their attackers, that's amazing. We fight our enemies all the time. Hashem tells us to fight our enemies. Of course we want to kill the Mitzrayim. Hashem did that. Why did Moshe silence those 2 people? So it's a very deep question. And the answer that is given to them is in the next pasuk. And Vayomer Shalom Moshe, Ma titzak elai. And Hashem says to Moshe, Ma titzak elai, why are you yelling at me? Because and Rashi there says that Moshe stopped and started davening to Hashem to save them. He's like, you have to save them, I promise them, right? Dabra b'nei Israel, why are you davening to me? He says, Dabra b'nei Israel v'yisa'u. Talk to the Jewish people and let them continue traveling. What is this answer, right? What is this answer? And herein is literally probably my favorite Rashi in the entire Torah. This is the Rashi. What kind of answer is that? Right? Where should they go? There's an ocean in front of them, right? Hashem has answered. They want to daven. Moshe's davening to Hashem. He's like, stop davening and travel. Where is he supposed to travel? What kind of answer is that? To not daven, to not fight, just travel. So what is Rashi's explanation on this? What do you mean travel? These words change my life. Daber b'nei Yisrael v'yisa'u, these 5 words. Tell the Jewish people to travel. Ein lahem ila lisa. They have nothing to do but travel. She'ein yam over b'fneim, because the ocean is not going to block them. It's not standing in front of them. Kedai hus avosehem v'emunah she'eminu bi v'yatzu. It's enough. They can rely on the faith that they place in me, and that they left Mitzrayim, that they followed me here to split the sea, to split the sea for them. The words that changed my life is Ein lahem el lisa she'ein yam over b'fneim. They have nothing to do but travel because the ocean is not standing in front of them. What do you mean? What does that mean? There is no ocean in front of them. Why shouldn't they daven? Answer is that Hashem said, it's if you were here without a plan, of course, daven, fight. But I already gave you instructions. I already told you what to do. I told you to leave Mitzrayim and to keep traveling towards Midbar Sinai to receive where I want to give you the Torah. So I already gave instructions for you. So because I gave you instructions, you already know what you need to do, and the ocean won't stop you, because when I give you, this goes back, he says, to the first Rashi in the entire Torah. So the first Rashi in the Torah is why the Torah starts with the letter Beis and not Aleph. And he says, Beis Rashis. It starts with the letter Beis to teach us that Hashem made the world for 2 things. Beis, for 2 things. Beis, one for the Torah and one for Bnei Israel. And what does that mean? For both of them, for Bnei Israel to keep the Torah. That is what the whole entire world is created, right? Because if we have no objects in this world, if we have no world, we can't keep the mitzvahs in the Torah. And therefore, because the entire world exists only for Bnei Israel to keep the Torah, then anytime we need to keep the Torah, the world can't stop us, because its whole existence is to enable us to keep the Torah. It says that when Hashem made the world, he said, well, what mitzvahs did it say to do in the Torah? It says we have to eat kosher, so let me make kosher animals. It says we can't eat not kosher, let me make not kosher animals, right? It says you have to put a mezuzah on your house, let me make wood and houses and mezuzahs. Everything in the world, it says, Hashem says, the Medrash says, V'stakel bo'raisa obara alma. Hashem looked in the Torah and then built the world. It's like, well, what do I need in a God? What do I need to do my God? So I'll build this, right? When you build something, you look at your blueprint, what you need, and then you build it. So Hashem said, I need this world, so Bnei Israel to keep the Torah. So I'll look in the Torah, and through that, I'll create everything in the world. And therefore, if the whole world's existence is only for us to keep the Torah, that is telling from the beginning of time that you never have to fear the world stopping you, the nature of the world stopping you from keeping the Torah, because it can't do that, because its whole existence is for you to keep the Torah. So if there ever comes a time that you feel that nature is blocking you, just keep going toward your destination, because it won't stop you. You'll just have to keep going, because that's your mission. And nature's mission is just to dissolve. And we actually see this in this week's Parsha in the next one of the next few words. Vayashav hayam lifnos boker le'etano. And the water returned in the early morning to its etano, to its previous strength. In this word is hidden another double meaning, a deeper meaning. Etano could also be rearranged to say litna'o, to its previous condition. And we learn from this, I brought you the Medrash. The next, there's 2 sources. There's a lot of sources on it, but I brought you 2 sources on this. Le'etano, otiot litna'o, right? This is what I just told you. The Balaturim says this. Shahitna, that Hashem made a condition, a t'nai, right? If I make a t'nai with you, it's a condition. Imayam b'maisa brachis sheyibaka livnei Israel. Hashem made a condition with the ocean in the creation of the world, sheyibaka, that will split before the Jewish people. And now it returned. And the Medrash echoes the same thing. The Shemos Rabbah that I brought you, Moshe said, what am I going to do, right? What do you mean? The ocean's not going to split. It's against nature for it to split. And Hashem reassured him and said, I'm the one who made a condition with the ocean, that from the beginning, that when it sees the Jewish people, it has to split. And so that is why, so that's why it returned to its state. So this is crazy. And that this condition we learn Hashem made with everything in the world, that just like Hashem made this condition with the ocean, that the condition is that I'm creating you to flow. But that's on condition that the Jewish people, that you're not stopping the Jewish people from keeping the Torah. When they come and they want to see the Torah and you're blocking them, you have to stop flowing and become a wall and make space for them, because that is the condition of your entire existence. And we take from this that the condition of all of nature and existence is to have a certain nature. The sun rises in the morning and sets at night. But if it's not serving the Jewish people, then you should continue rising into the night, like we see in Shemesh B'Givon, which is in this week's Parsha or next week's Parsha, with the Yeshua. When the sun stayed up, Moshe's hands were up. Okay, I trust you. With the sun staying up, right? So we see time and time again that nature is intended to have a specific design of teva to conceal Hashem's hand. But as long as it doesn't interfere with our mission to serve Hashem, with our mission to keep the Torah, and when it does, have no fear. It's conditioned not to do that for you. And this is a phenomenal idea that I read in one of my favorite books, Paul Coelho's book, The Alchemist. I'm going to read you his quotes. And he says this, and it's crazy. I don't think he's Jewish. And this idea, he articulated it so beautifully. So I'm going to read it down. He says, and when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you achieve it. That when you have your goal and your mission, then you'll see that instead of stopping you, the universe will conspire to help you find it. And I love those words because when we're going to our mission, when we have a mission, Hashem told us to get the Torah already, it's clear what we need to do. We don't have to worry about Teva, right? Teva's not going to stop us. He says the Yam is not going to stop you because that's not why the world was created. So you just have to keep going to your mission. And it's just such a crazy idea. Ein lahem elisa, just keep traveling. There's an ocean there, but so what? The ocean is not standing in your way. It's never going to stand in your way. And as Chabad Shluchim, I taught this to 7th graders in an online school. Years before COVID, there was already a Chabad online school for all the Shluchim who live in places where there's no Jewish school. And I taught 7th grade girls sichas, and we learned the sicha, and I asked them to come back to me with stories from their Chabad houses, from their parents, when they've just had to do things and nature like seemed impossible naturally, and to come back with stories of how nature just dissolved in front of their mission. Because we see it as shluchim every single day, and I wasn't a shlucha then, but now I see it myself, and each of them had stories after stories of their parents just saying that they had to, open a school, and they didn't have a building. They just kept advertising the school with the location to be announced, and like days before school opened, they were given a building, right? Minutes before. We don't have to worry about what naturally makes sense, right? We don't know where we're going to keep going. We just have to go towards what we're meant to do, which is to keep, to keep mitzvot and Torah and to do something positive. Hashem gave us a directive in life, then we just keep going. And nature will find its way to conspire to help us find it. Right? Hashem will take care of the nature part of it because nature won't stand in our way. We just have to keep trying, right? Doesn't mean you don't try to find a building. You try and try and try, but don't worry about the laws of nature, right? Because that's not going to stop you. And we see it with finances and shulchas all the time, right? We just keep going, and then miracles happen for us financially and in so many more ways. There's every shliach can sit here and tell you countless stories of when there naturally seemed no way to do something, but they just kept moving towards their mission, and then nature ended up just serving them, because that's how it works in the world, really, when we really have emunah. But it's interesting that the Rashi says that what is the schos for this? Does it always work? Kedai lahem emunah she'eminu bi. He says the schos for this is that they had emunah in me, that they trusted me. When you continue going and you tell Hashem, I trust you, you'll make this happen. That's the schus for them. They followed me here, right? The munah that they followed me out, trusting me into the desert where they don't know where they're going to get food from, without water, and they trusted me. That's enough for me to just keep paving the way for them. They don't need a daven. That's why they don't need a daven. They don't need a fight. They don't need to do anything because I already told them where to go. They just have to keep going. And they should know that because they had a munah on me, then that's going to happen for them. All they need to do is turn on that munah switch and just say, Hashem will make it happen. And I'm going to keep taking the steps I need to get to do what I need to do, my mission in life, to get to receive the Torah. It was literally to get the Torah. So just keep going towards Har Sinai, and the Munah will suffice, and I'll split the sea for you. It was just natural that it's going to happen. It's just a phenomenal idea. It changed my life. It changed the way I look at things, and to stop holding myself back with laws of nature, right? With things that seem impossible naturally, and to know that if Hashem could split the ocean for it, and then so many other laws that we confine ourselves to, like time or money, or things like people will believe me. And I've done this over and over again in my life since I'm a young girl. Remember, I was trying to make a Shabbaton in this, like, to take it to the next level for my school. And I was in 10th grade at the time. And I was in charge of Shabbaton committee. And instead of doing it in a Chabad house, I'm like, let's do this in the big hotel. I'm like, we're never going to find a hotel within our budget. And I'm like, yes, we will. And everyone in charge of me in the school, I remember, kept saying, it's not possible. It's not possible. And I'm like, it is. And that was. We just found a place. We spoke to, I was 10 years old. I spoke to hotel managers to give us discounted rates somehow. And we ended up having this amazing Shabbaton in this beautiful hotel. They did everything for us in the kitchen and made it kosher for us. And even so many people said it's just not possible in the time frame and the budget to have this many hotel rooms, right? And this many students. It just doesn't exist naturally. You're right, it doesn't actually, but we can find a way when you just keep pushing. And I really wanted it to be really special and meaningful. And that's what happened. So we just keep having to stop to listen to people, and they tell us no, it doesn't make sense. How are you going to do that? How are you going to accomplish that? Especially our youth, because the youth have that in them, right? And then as of an adult, I wish I had that same determination. At least we should learn from our youth and not tell them, not be that voice in their head that tells them to lower their expectations, to lower their goals, to let them use that. And the Rebbe always said that that's the power of the youth, that they don't let anything stop in their way. And we should never be the voice of reason, because reason is our, adult limited, afraid of and being affected by the natural things that we've seen over and time again. But when we understand that Teva is also a creation of Hashem, and that Hashem created it with Tnaim, then we understand that the children really understand how things are, right? They know, they get what they want. By all of the ideas, even though davening and fighting are not a bad idea, when Hashem gave us clear directives to move forward, and we have a clear mission in front of us, when something is not black and white, it's clear this is a positive thing we have to do to help somebody. It's like Basya. So what? Stretch out your arm, even though you can't reach her. That's okay. You just have to do your part, stretch out your arm, And just know that, yes, naturally arms are a certain length, but Hashem created arms, right? And Hashem can change things. And she had that emunah and that trust, and that was the schus that extended her arm, right? So we just have to extend as far as we could and not be bothered by nature stopping us, and to remember that the whole world is created Beis Rashis, right, for us, and that the conditions in nature were put in for us to keep the Torah, and that we're not going to stop us, and the universe will never stop us. And the Paul is able to understand this and see this, that when you're going towards your goal, even the universe won't stop in your way. And that's like the idea of alchemy. It's like changing, even nature. It's like nature is here to serve you, and you just have to keep with your mission and what you're looking for, what you're searching for, and allow nature to serve you. So we'll end part 1 here, and then we're going to go to part 2, Kriyas Yamsuf, and just life-changing idea of Kriyas Yamsuf and how we can split ourselves to make space for how we do Kriyas Yamsuf inside of ourselves. Really crazy idea, and it's about shidduchim. So if anybody has any idea of shidduchim, it explains why Kriyas Yamsuf is compared to shidduchim and marriage and relationships. So thank you for joining this part 1 of Parshat Beshalach. I'm so honored to have you. Have a wonderful week.